Welcome to the Stage Analysis members midweek video. So it is Wednesday the 24th of August. I'm going to start tonight's video with a run through of the Uranium Group stocks and the ETF, one of the major ETFs that covers it, URA. There's another one called URNM as well. Both fairly good coverage of the stock, but URA is the biggest one. So I'm going to start off with that as a big sign of strength bar today within the uranium stocks, multiple stocks within the group, all gapping up higher within potential stage one bases. It's still potentially a tentative stage one. It's a more complex stage one than we've seen in other areas of the market, as the group itself has tried to break down multiple times. So if I quickly flick, this is the intraday 2-hour chart. If I flick to the weekly chart, I'll give a run through of that first to show where we're at the moment. So going all the way back to 2020 lows, had a quick shakeout in stage 4 before moving up into stage 1 and then breaking out into a new stage 2 breakout move in sort of mid 2020 time, pull back in underneath the breakout point, but managed to do a follow through and a strong stage 2 advance through 2020, 2021. A fairly big shakeout move in the middle part of 2021, where potentially in this area here, this change of behavior potentially started to move into stage 3. But there was a quick sharp recovery move there, so moved back out with stage 2 continuation before a further change of behavior, and then potential start of stage 3 again. So we would mark this as potential start of the stage 3 structure. So you can see it attempted to break down into stage 4 multiple times within here, shakeout move, which reversed back up again, failed. So failed move into stage 4 here. You can see the moving average didn't start to roll over. It started to flatten out, but didn't quite make it there. And we got a quick reversal, shakeout move back up into the range once more into stage 3, which broadened out, and then attempted to move down again. Potentially, you might see an early attempt here to start to break down into stage 4 again, but was still within the range. And as it followed through into the following week, again a demand tail and a further spring type action. So some people might potentially class this area in here as a stage 4 attempt, which then again has now once again failed. We've rallied back up again, yet another spring, and come back up into the base structure. So as I said, this is a bit of a complex one, much more complex than your average stock or ETF. You can see at the current moment, we've got this area in here where the base structure has been beginning to form. We had these 4 weeks where it undercut the low of that range there and came back in again, started to move higher again. And this week we've got a significant bar on the weekly candle here, a big engulfing candle back above the now rising 30-week moving average. So we've got a potential start of a stage 1 base developing in here now with this change of behavior that we're seeing, especially with today's price action. So if we move down to the daily chart of this, you'll be able to see it a little bit easier here. So you've got this big bar today which rallied up, closed right at the still declining 200-day moving average here. So closed right on that today, but you can see the strong relative volume that came into the group today. So all of the individual stocks saw this as well. If we drop down to the individual charts, you can see all of the volume coming into the individual stocks. So it was a big group move, not just in the ETF. There was all the individual stocks got strong relative volume as well. So again, this is the daily chart of that. So if I mark out the potential current stage 1 base, as I said, multiple little shakeout moves within here, rallied back up, and we got this sign of strength bar today, big significant bar on heavy volume. So potentially forming a stage 1 base. At the moment, the top of that range is around this 24 level to potentially move up and out into stage 2. So again, if we go back to the weekly, quickly show you that once more. We've got this area up here. So if you're looking for a follow through move, potentially either this week or into next week, where you can potentially break out early in here, which would potentially only just be forming a shallow sort of cup type pattern, but it would be a potential early stage 2 breakout. As you can see, that 30-week moving average is starting to turn up, although the 10-week moving average is still quite far below here, but relative strength starting to outperform the zero line here. So we go back to our intraday chart that I started with. You can show a way that you can use stage analysis on multiple time frames. So as I said, we're in potentially stage 1 on the weekly chart at the moment, and we're looking for a stage 2 breakout attempt. But you can get in earlier. I did highlight it earlier on back in July on the stage 2, on the intraday stage 2 breakout attempt in here. Didn't make too much progress. You can see there was strong relative volume on that move into the breakout, which we want to see on a stage 2 breakout. So as with the weekly chart, you can use I'm using the 2-hour chart here. So Stock Charts now has a 78-minute chart and a 130-minute chart, which equal out the bars a little bit better during the day. But I do like the 2-hour chart still, as the first half-hour bar on Stock Charts is a 30-minute bar, and then the rest of the day bars are 2-hour bars. So it's a little bit of a weird one, but the first 30 minutes of trading generally has a lot more volume, as does the last 30 minutes of trading. But the first 30 minutes is generally a much more volatile time. So actually having a 30-minute bar mixed in with the 2-hour bars does actually make a little bit of sense in that regard, as a lot of the times intraday breakouts happen in that first 30 minutes when you have the opening range breakouts, etc. So again, going back to this is it's also a good example of combining the Wyckoff method with stage analysis, which I highly recommend and obviously teach people on the service or on my various videos. But you can see here, when the base structure starts to form, look for the classic Wyckoff characteristics. Got your preliminary support, got selling climax in here, and then automatic rally. So at this point in here, we start to mark your base structure from your selling climax to your automatic rally. Start to mark a base structure out. Then we've got secondary tests. So that's the beginning of a structure. Some further testing action. We've got a little bit of local spring type action within here, following through with a sign of strength rally, but failure at this point. Up thrust attempt, came back in, formed a lower low, higher low. Which is your last point of support, and then we got this stage 2 breakout attempt on the strong relative volume. So with Weinstein's method, you're looking for, on a daily chart, we tend to look for 3 times the average daily volume. On a weekly chart, we're looking for 2 times average volume. So on an intraday chart, it's very much the same. We just want to see exceptional volume on that time frame compared to the average. So 3 times the average here, so potentially this one easily 3 times the average on that bar. So we had a good initial stage 2 run. The backup didn't come all the way back into the range. It actually held up quite strongly and then continued on, but it did start to roll over into a small stage 3 here. You can see the little double top here. So at this point in here, as you start to get this change of behavior, double top type action, it starts to come back in, start to form a potential stage 3 range. Then we had an intraday stage 4 breakdown, and it came back into the range. However, we've had this strong move today, this exceptional volume coming into the group again, all 4 bars in this encompassing today's significant bar here. We're on strong volume, so really good look to that. But you can see we've actually got this base on base type structure as well, if you mark the full structures here. So we've got this initial stage 1 base, and then the run up into this secondary base structure here. So we've actually formed a secondary spring in here. So we've got this terminal shakeout as a spring with a higher low test. So spring and a test, and then this sign of strength rally up here. So this actually could, looking at it from a Wyckoff perspective, this is what we consider a major backup range, and then it's coming out. So we've got these fractal patterns, bases within bases, and then making a stage 2 continuation breakout within the intraday. So again, if I go back to the weekly here and then to the daily, you can see this, as I said, the structure. We're looking, in order to move out into stage 2 here, we've got these intraday base structures which have now continued on, and we're looking for this to follow through above that 200-day moving average with a sign of strength rally out of the range into a stage 2 breakout attempt, and then obviously start to come back in again. Potentially your secondary entry point might be on a pullback towards the top of the range, and then follow through move, tennis ball type action off towards the highs again. So as you would see, that would form a cup and handle type pattern if it did. We're not there yet. We've only got a very shallow cup at the moment with a bit of a inverse head and shoulders type look to it at the moment. So whatever you want to call it, whatever type of pattern you're looking for, doesn't really matter. We're just looking at the price action and what's forming. And as you can see at the moment, we've got this developing stage one base potentially. So today's action obviously very encouraging. As I said, individual stocks within here, we've got CCJ, for example. Again, big heavy volume on the day. So 16 million shares traded there. It's the biggest volume it's had since this here, where it quickly topped out and reversed back down again. But similar to the group structure here, we've got this range that's developing. So potential for a new stage two breakout. You could suggest that it's a small base in terms of a base structure, because it never broke down into stage four. There's very little in the way of overhead resistance, so much more potential for this to make a new stage two breakout attempt. As I said, with the breakout, you're then looking for a potential backing up action for a secondary entry point and tennis ball action off to new highs. Similar with the other stocks in the group, the smaller names below $5. Quite a lot of the uranium stocks are low price stocks. CCJ is one of the only bigger ones. So DNN, similar price actions to CCJ there. NXE doing the same type of thing, but a little bit less on the relative strength front than that one. UEC, also reasonable relative strength in this one. You can see, again, the base structure that's developing, not quite as strong as CCJ. It's still below this pivot here. And then URA, the group's actually broken above the near-term pivot today. URG, another one above the near-term pivot today, but again below the 200-day moving average on that one. URNM, the other ETF from the group, above the 200-day, and UROI, much weaker, much more lower price stock, but again still potentially forming the stage one base structure. You had the terminal shakeout and higher low testing here, and yet another higher low. So looking for this one to start breaking up through that $3 level and potentially up through the 200-day with the rest of the group. But there's certainly a group theme going on. UUUU, one of the other major ones, is a bit bigger. 8 million shares traded today. It's still a low price stock low. As I said, most of the stocks in the uranium subgroup are low price stocks except for CCJ. So this one, again, big significant bar, hadn't yet broke above the near-term pivot, but big volume coming into that today. So very much a group theme going on today in the group. So definitely a strong contender for potential stage two breakout in the coming days or weeks. So one to keep an eye on potentially. All right, let's move on now to today's earnings results.